Dun, 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 dun. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends. We are here on my free-to-pause account because we are going to be talking about Valkyrie and the impact that she has. But specifically, I have managed to break into Fire Knight Hard, and I've gotten all the way up Fire Knight Hard 6. But to be fair, I am consistently farming Fire Knight 2 hard, at least, because 2 I can make sure that is 100% consistent. 3 might be 100% consistent, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And 6, well, I'm kind of struggling on it. I beat it the first time I tried it and have not really beaten it since, when I tried to make some tweaks to maybe speed it up just a little bit. But overall, I thought it was kind of an interesting team to be able to get through Fire Knight, and I figured I would share it with you guys because, well, you know, Fire Knight is one of the most important dungeons to farm to this day. Regeneration gear is great, stun gear is great, savage gear is great, shield gear, there's a little bit of use for it occasionally, and you know what, crit damage gear is usable until you no longer can use 2-piece sets, which is very, very endgame. So there's a lot of great gear. In fact, it's really the best dungeon to farm other than maybe Spider and definitely the event dungeon, because you know, you're just going to get gear that you're going to be using for a long time on your account. And in some cases, yeah, you may only be using a couple sets of it and then you're done with it. But it is nice to have these sets, and it's nice to be able to farm a dungeon where you are getting good value because you have different options for good sets in it. So it's not just 1 or 2 good sets and the rest are not great. And the sets that you're getting are sets that you're going to need a lot of. You will want a lot of Savage. You'll probably want a good amount of stun gear. Even with the ability now to move gear for free, there's some minimum level of champions you're going to always want geared. So, you know, let's go talk about my use of Valk and Fire Knight Hard. But first of all, I want to talk about the other area of the game where Valkyrie I thought was going to be a big impact, and she's been pretty solid so far. Now, this is against Magic Affinity, where I've honestly been able to 2-key off and on with my other team with Tyrant, but swapping out Tyrant for Valkyrie has allowed me to, you know, free up a champion so I can rebuild Tyrant a little bit differently if I want to. But it's also given me a more consistent team against Force Clan Boss. Against Force Clan Boss, I did my absolute best ever of about 35 million damage, and then the next run I did about 30 to 32 million damage. So that is already somewhere between 2 to 8 million more than my previous best on Force. And those seem to be very, very consistent numbers. My other team with Tyrant, unfortunately, because he was in Relentless, it was both good and bad, and it really depended on when the Relentless procced and if it helped me or if it hurt me. If I didn't outrun a ally protection, then Tyrant might die a little earlier than he might otherwise. On the other hand, if I got back a turn to get the ally protection out when I didn't have it, he could possibly save the run. So I would get anywhere from 50 million, I think I did 50 million once on Ultra Nightmare on the Magic Affinity, to somewhere as low as 26 to 28 million. So Valkyrie brings a much more consistent, controlled team. With Brogni, I have shields up pretty much all the time, and they are absolutely huge. On top of that, I do have Taragi, who also puts shields up as well. So I have 3 different people that are putting up some level of shield. You're getting the healing from Brogni with the shields dying. You're getting healing from Ugo to keep everyone alive. You're getting damage reflection from Brogni, and you're getting damage reflection from Geomancer, and of course you're getting poison reflection from Taragi as well. So overall, it is a fun, classic clan boss team, and you know, with these 2 keys right here, as you can see, I managed to 2-key this just fine. I'm doing, you know, 36 to 38 million damage on Magic Affinity, and Magic Affinity, of course, is the worst one for Valk, so Valk becomes targeted. Valk gets the stun occasionally. I'd have 2 different people that can cleanse this, plus we also have block debuffs, so she doesn't get stunned too often. And overall, it's consistent enough for me to think that I may have a finally 2-key consistent Ultra Nightmare team. Now, I do need to run this against Spirit to see where that is, and of course, versus Force, it drops just a little bit, where it looks like I'm maybe about 5 million short overall, but that means I can just simply start working on the stats on these champions just a little bit to get that extra bit of damage. As I work on my Great Hall, I should be fine, and honestly, I can use a little bit of live arena stuff to just pump this up just a little bit. I don't like using a lot of the live arena stuff for the Demon Lord, but occasionally, some of the cheap level ones, a couple plus 2% here, plus 4% there, doesn't hurt too much. And if it gets me a 2-key consistent Ultra Nightmare team, I have solved Clan Boss on this account, and I can start focusing on other areas. So here in Fire Knight, you can see that I got all the way up to stage 6, but you can also see that some of these stages were a little long in the run. I want to say stage 4 required 2 runs to be able to do, just because of bad affinity. Maybe it was stage 5. I cannot remember which of those 2 stages required a second run. Stage 6, I have since run several times, and it has not worked properly. Some of that is because I actually did do some tweaking of the team, and that tweaking, has helped on stage 2, and it's designed for stage 6 tweaking, but overall I have not quite gotten stage 6 to be consistent yet. And the problem with stage 6 is one of my champions is dying a little sooner than I would like. And some of that may just be I need to roll up some of the gear and reinvest in defense and HP for that champion just a little bit better. So we'll talk about it, but I'll show you the stage 2 run, which again is 100% consistent. I have never failed on stage 2. And as you can see, it's under 100 turns. In fact, it's actually pleasantly under 100 turns. So for the time battles, it's actually really good. And then for actual time, it honestly runs about 3 to 3.5 minutes most of the time, but it's run as fast as 2 minutes and 45 seconds, which is pretty cool. And again, it only can go up from here as I improve the champion builds. So let's take a look at the champions. Let's take a look at the setup, and then I can show you the builds of these champions after we go through a run of Fire Knight. So here is my team. We've got Mithrala, we've got Valkyrie, we've got Lydia, we've got Alice, and we've got Creodin. Now, some champions can be swapped out a little bit. You can certainly use different champions as well. For example, Alice is not required. Alice is just kind of the good wave nuker with somebody who has a multi-hit A1. She has got a triple hit A1 or a double hit, occasionally a triple hit A1, so she can get through the shield when the shield gets down. So I would highly recommend you using somebody who has at least a double hit on that A1 as a wave clear if you can. But honestly, it could be just about any nuker. It could be a Trunda if that's what you've got. It could be anybody else. As long as they are going to hit hard, help you with the waves, and bring multiple hits against the boss, they are going to be valuable. If they can bring other stuff as well, they can continue to be more valuable. So if you have like a Yakarl built, for example, Yakarl could actually add some additional value to this team because he suddenly adds additional freezes, which can keep the champion's shield down longer, and that will be very helpful for doing more damage overall. Now, Yakarl, you can build him for damage, you can also build him for control, you can do a little bit of both, and he's a free champion, so that is a free accessible replacement to Alice if you don't have an Alice. But regardless, that is what you're kind of using Alice for. Creodin, again, he is there for the freeze. He is very helpful for the wave control. He helps keep the team alive on the waves. He does bring some additional turn meter, and of course, freezes are great for controlling the boss. But in the way that this team seems to work and the fact that he's not getting a lot of that turn meter control, I honestly think I could swap him out for a Cold Heart. Now, if you build Cold Heart for this team, you're going to need to make sure you build the tankiest Cold Heart you've ever tank, because if you're going to use Cold Heart for this stuff, you're going to want 50-ish K HP, and honestly, Creodin's defense is probably a little low at 2,300. You're probably looking to closer to 2,600 to 3,000 for a Cold Heart if you can really get it done. As you can see here, I mentioned that I'm having trouble keeping him alive right now against the boss. So as I can get more defense, and to be fair, I have, I believe, a defense banner on him and a defense amulet on him, and I don't know if it's an attack or a defense ring. I think it's actually an attack ring because it was the right set for I needed for the speed I wanted. But getting him some more defense and HP will help keep him alive a little bit more. And some of that stuff I just need to roll up a little bit more and probably glyph up a little bit more. And if I can get his defense closer to about 2,600 to 3,000, then that might actually make that level 6 just a little bit better. Now with the Cold Heart, you're certainly going to want all the accuracy. You're certainly going to want to be able to do some level of damage. So you're going to want to build the crit rate to 70% for the Heart Seeker and build some damage into that. But honestly, you're more important with a Cold Heart, and the reason I think Cold Heart's a good option instead of Creodin is her A1 brings block healing, which will prevent him from healing when he brings the shield back up. I don't have block healing on this team, so I am mostly trying to out damage through the healing, but with Cold Heart, getting that healing down would be very helpful. So that's another good option as well. And I think would be just as good as the extra turn meter control you're going to get from a Creodin. And then, of course, you get some extra damage from the Heartseeker. But honestly, I would sacrifice a ton of crit damage to get them super tanky and high accuracy. And, you know, it's just extra bonus damage that you get from that. So if they're at 180 crit damage or 150 crit damage even, with enough crit rate, but they have the survival stats to make sure they stay alive, then that is a great Cold Heart as long as they can land that big debuff, because that block healing is super critical for using a Cold Heart. But that gives you a quad hit A1, and Cold Heart's also smart, so if you turn off Cold Heart's A2, you'll only get A1s and A3s, and you don't even need to program them properly. You can just make them on infinite auto, and Cold Heart will automatically only do the Heartseeker when the shield is down. So very, very good way to use the champion, and in fact, very similar to teams I have used a long time ago. Cold Heart is great for this content. So Mythrala, very good. Honestly, probably one of the better champions for this particular content, because Mythrala gives us a chance to get increased defense, which is very helpful in keeping everyone alive. Her Hex can be very good against the waves to keep the waves controlled, to add some extra damage, and of course the increased attack can give us some extra damage as well. But also she has the Strengthen and the Cleanse with the shield, so she can actually help keep us alive a little bit more, again reducing the damage we're taking from the boss. And of course, since this is a longer fight that is going to take multiple times of us getting hit, we want to make sure we are going to survive for the long haul. So having things like shields and strengthens can be very, very good. You also could use, I've got Brimstone on my Mythrala, and that is fine, but you could also use the one that allows you to reflect damage if you have increased defense up, and that would actually help you through the shield quite a bit more. That is actually a good option if you have like a Martyr instead of a Valkyrie as well, who would swap in for Valkyrie for this team. Martyr has increased defense with her counterattack, so therefore you would get the counterattack up as well as the ability to reflect damage with that increased defense. As far as the settings are concerned for Mythrala here, she also has the double hitter A1, very, very helpful. We are turning off this toxic sigil here on the second wave because I want to open with that on the third wave. The way this team works is when it gets to the third wave, we don't worry about bringing the shield down first. We worry about prepping to be able to counterattack the first time he does an AoE attack. And from there, we are going to then drop the shield because we will get all of these counterattacks, get the shield almost entirely down, and then the rest of these regular attacks will be able to get through the shield. And then Mythrala can cleanse the decreased defense and decreased speed that the boss puts up after this particular hit to make sure that we are not hurt badly the next time he takes a turn, and we get our turns in when we want to get the turns in. Valkyrie here, she is set up to do, basically she's only got one skill, so it's the A2 here, and then of course the A1. We're turning off the A2 here, and she is going to do it as the first thing that she does on here. You don't really need to program this because she's going to do this whenever it is off cooldown. So you got the counterattack and the shield. She is 250 speed. Her accuracy is not great, but I don't need a lot of accuracy for this particular boss, so that is fine. I do have her built for damage, but if you want to build her for more defense to get a bigger shield, you could certainly do that. 4,400 defense is honestly a little low for a Valk, where I would certainly like her. I'd like her closer to about 5,000. It's just the gear I have on this account, so it's something I can continue to work on, and that will make this more consistent and a little safer for the higher levels as I get that defense up as well. Again, good HP doesn't hurt either, because again, you want her to survive. Her A1 does do damage based off of attack, but again, we're here to make sure that she brings great shields, and the rest of the stuff is all gravy. So this extra damage and this extra crit rate is gravy. You don't need it, but it will make the waves much faster, and it will certainly help against the boss because she can do a decent amount of damage with her hits. We've got Lydia here. Lydia here is, basically unprogrammed here, and if she happens to have the nullification, it's a double hitter. It helps with the shield. I want her to do this first. Honestly, I think I probably would rather have her do this first now that I think about it, because I want her to do the Siren's Wail whenever the shield is down, so I don't want her to start with that, and we're not getting through the shield on the first attack anymore, so I can save this double hitter, so perhaps it might help bring down the shield later on. I wish Lydia was a little smarter to actually do this when the shield is up, but there's not too much I can do about it. So hopefully we're going to get that decreased then weaken. We have the strengthen, and the increased speed is very, very helpful because that'll keep us moving. And again, got two different sources of strengthen, which means strengthen should be up almost all the time. That's going to reduce the amount of damage we take and keep us alive against the boss. Alice is here for wave clear. I don't really have her programmed for much. I don't really care however, on the round 3 here, I don't care for this at all. Unlike with classic Fire Knight, where turn meter control is actually an option, and I actually do want her to do this turn meter control, I would rather she mostly do this Vorpal Sword, because this is a triple hitter, but this Queenslayer does do a lot of damage, and against the hard Fire Knight, I'm just starting to get to the area where this extra ignore defense, along with the extra damage this does, is going to be more than this triple hit is, as far as pure damage to the boss is concerned. This absolutely nukes the boss down. My LS also has a Cat's Gaze on her, so she's already ignoring another 16% more defense, maybe even 18%. I can't remember which the level mine is. And of course, I've got her in some Savage, so she's ignoring another 25% from that. Plus, she has Helm Smasher, so she could possibly be ignoring 100% defense with this attack, which means that she's doing pure damage, and that is absolutely amazing. And then finally, we have Creodan here. Generally, I have him prioritizing his Razor Hell, which is the AoE control. If I don't, he likes to do this increased speed thing first. It's fine, but versus the waves, I would rather make sure they're frozen first to make sure they're not getting a turn. If I was doing a Cold Heart, I probably would prioritize her A2 as well, because that's just going to be doing the AoE damage as opposed to the Heart Seeker, but it's not a big deal either way. For round 3, I found that I wanted all the multiple hits most of the time, and when I was using this thing for the increased speed and the turn meter fill, I often was using it at times when I really, really wished I was actually getting an attack to try to control the turn meter of the boss. So I found that turning this off actually has helped overall. I've got Lydia doing increased speed. It just means that it occasionally might drop off because I only have one champion doing it. And 15% turn meter is nice, but how often that led to an extra attack when the shield was down, or how often that led to an extra attack to down the shield versus him just doing it directly and doing something useful and possibly knocking the turn meter back, I felt that this was more important here. So, we prioritize the Razor Hail. Razor Hail is a 65% chance to place freeze, versus this is a 35% chance on a triple hitter. Generally, I think you're better off prioritizing this, but if you really would prefer to play the odds, you could turn off the Razor Hail as well and go straight with this for the triple hitter all the time with the freeze. But I'm looking to land as many freezes as possible. This could land 2 freezes, and is more likely to land 2 freezes than this is, even with this third hit. So overall, I am looking for probably just more freezes and more turn meter control when possible. So that is how I have Creodan set up. So with that said, let's save that, because I did make some changes here. And let's go make this run. We're going to mostly skip to the boss here, because the waves are pretty much what you would expect the waves to be. We, freeze the waves out. We put the Hex out there as well. Valk does some nukage, and, we're almost through wave 1 pretty quickly. In fact, we get to the boss not too bad, at least on this floor. Now, once you get to level 6, these champions have a lot more toughness on them, so there's a little bit more to basically delay your team on here. Plus, of course, we're not doing all of the extra hex and other stuff like that too. But hey, we're getting most of those freezes there, so the fact that there may only be one champion that can even take a turn on the enemy team is absolutely amazing. And hey, look at this. They have never actually gotten a turn, and we're going to get into the boss. So from here, we're just going to skip over to the boss. All right, so we're at the boss, and I've moved myself a little bit more out of the way. This is the setup round, so we are not expecting to get through the shield, but we have the increased defense here. I think the only thing I possibly could do is if I could figure out how to get Mithrala to do her increased defense before Valk takes the first turn, and the fact that Valk is fast enough to actually take a turn. Yeah, so I probably, on this boss, I want to have Valk start with the A1 first, and then do her counterattack skill before the boss takes a turn. But we are already almost through the shield here. Now we got the triple hits going on there. Lydia is getting her double hits here. Shield almost down, and look at how much turn meter he already doesn't have. And we got some turn meter decrease there as well. Getting some poisons up are great because those poisons actually help counteract some of the healing, and that was the big nuke I was talking about with Alice's A3. You can saw that did a ton of damage. That actually outdamaged what a Cold Heart might have done on a 10% hit. So that is really nice. Still a bunch of damage here for Alice as well. And that's why it's nice to bring a damage dealer, because that can speed things up. But at the same time, your Carl, if he lets you do stage 6 and it's a little bit slower because you don't have as much damage, well, then your Carl is a great choice for this stuff. There is the healing, though. As you saw here, he took a little bit of damage from the poison, and then he healed back up. So poisons help counteract that, but are not perfect for that. The other thing we do have to make sure is we do not want to fill up with too many poisons, because if you get too many poisons on the boss, you cannot actually land any more of the freezes. You actually have to have an open spot to land a freeze to get that turn meter decrease from the freezes. So at some point in time, Creodin's help will be limited, but since we are kind of chunking through this boss pretty quickly, it's not really a major issue. We will probably have this boss down before we fill up his turn meter. Or his debuff bar, I should say. So, here we go. We're at 3 minutes and 10, just a little bit more, and we should have this done. Alice probably is going to finish us off right here. Not quite. He could die on his turn with the poisons, though, too. And if not, he'll die right there. So there we go. Poison sensitivity does help from Lydia as well. That's going to add extra damage from Mithrala's poisons. And yeah, for the most part, this is a 100% team. It's at 80 turns here, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Fire Knight hard too. I think this is a great team. I think, honestly, it's a fairly accessible team. Obviously, you need a counterattack champion to kind of make this work. If you have an ally attack champion, that would certainly be a different way to go. You're going to want somebody that is a everybody goes ally attacker when possible, because if you have a little bit more random, you could hit people that are not quite as good joining in the ally attack. So your Lanicus's are not going to be quite as good as like your Fat Men, or, your Podregs, or your Lanatharls, or your Cardials, or some of those more meta ally attackers. Honestly, if you get yourself a Lady Mikage, she would be great for this as well. But you know what? I don't have an ally attacker other than Morag. So that's, Morag is a couple people join in, but not everybody. And so that is not quite as ideal. That said, I could certainly maybe instead use her instead of Creodin and kind of hope to get through the shield just a little more often, maybe. But I also have enough people putting Strengthen up that would probably interfere with her counterattack ability as well in this team. Although, again, we got Valkyrie for the counterattack, so it's probably not a big issue. But that is generally how I would recommend the team. The only other replacement I do want to mention is, instead of Lydia, you could certainly use other decreased defense champions. You could use a Duck the Pierced, would bring decreased attack as well, which could be very good for keeping the boss's damage down, so that's not a bad option as well. You could also use Stagnite. I think Stagnite might actually be a little bit better than Lydia overall, because while he is not going to bring the weakened, which might make the waves just take a little bit longer, he has a decreased speed on the A1 and a double hitter A1 as well, which could make him more valuable overall. And, Lydia is very accessible. Stagnite's also in theory very accessible, even though I don't have a Stagnite on this account. But overall, I thought this was a fun Fire Knight hard team that might help some folks that are struggling to move into Fire Knight hard find a team they can use. Finally, just to show you off the builds here quickly, we have Alice here in some Savage. I've got Brimstone on her. Brimstone's probably not helping too much against the boss at this point in time. I could certainly maybe change this to something more PvP oriented now, finally, with this build, especially if I went something like Soul Reap might be good, because that might get me a couple of extra turns off the boss by just Soul Reaping the boss, so that's certainly an option. But, her gear is pretty solid, and again, I've got a Cat's Gaze on her, so that's ignoring an extra that is extra 16% there, so very nice. Mithrala here is just, high accuracy, good speed, could be built for damage. You could certainly put crit rate on her. She actually does do a decent amount of damage. And as far as the build's concerned, there's nothing really special about this build. I could see putting her in something like a bolster set, for example, is not a bad option as well, although we get the shields from Valk, so that's not really an issue. But sometimes it's nice to have the shields up on the first round of everything as well. So that's another option. I actually like Mithrala in bolster. She's got a bunch of extra base HP for that in the first place. It can be helpful in a lot of areas of the game. Lydia, again, built pretty fast. I've got the instinct gear here, so that is giving me the chance to do some resets on occasion for her. She is certainly very fast at 266. plenty of accuracy. She would be fine on any level of the Hard Fire Knight because she's built very tanky and built very fast. We've got Valkyrie here. I have her in Reflex gear, and I think Reflex gear is great for this particular boss because that gives you the chance to get the counterattack and the shield up just a little bit more often. And to be fair, the shield is a 3-turn shield on a 3-turn cooldown, so the shield should always be up once you get that shield up. But it is nice to be able to not only refresh that on occasion, but it is nice to get back that extra counterattack because otherwise the counterattack is only 2 turns lasting, and you might need that extra turn occasionally here. As I said, I can certainly get her a little bit higher with defense here by raising this thing up a bit. I certainly could glyph a few more things out. And if I can ever get defense ascension on here and ascend some of the top pieces on here, I can add probably another, 500 to 1,000 defense to her with this particular build. Otherwise, I could certainly use another build. I do have another build available on the presets that I was thinking about using. This one here is about the same speed. It has a lot more accuracy and a lot more defense. So if I was worried about survivability or I wanted to make sure I got the better shields, I could use this build instead. But I think the damage as well as the reflex gear gives me a little more flexibility as well as some extra clearance on the waves. And then finally, Creote in the blue, I have him in double impulse right here, not instinct. I think I called that instinct earlier. That is impulse gear. So he's getting the chance to reset multiple times. So he gets his A2 up just a little bit more often. As I said, since I've recently regeared him, I need to roll up some of this gear again. So there's a little extra defense. That's another 70 defense I can get on him pretty easily. This is an attack ring, but this is going to give me some HP or defense down there, which could be very helpful. Defense amulet, certainly not going to hurt. And okay, this is accuracy on here, not defense, but I can certainly raise his HP a little bit. So I can get more defense on him. I can extend these pieces to get more defense on him. Honestly, it would be nice to get rid of this attack gloves and find something better, but these attack gloves are actually pretty solid for the other stats I need. So maybe that's something I should be looking for as well, to replace this piece, and maybe that would make him a little bit safer for Fire Knight level 6. But those are the champion builds that we have. One of the things I like here is I like the Molten Death Bell. So if he applies that freeze, he gives himself an extra 10% stun. I think the Molten Death Bell is a great thing for Creote in the blue. If you get one of them, throw it on him. You don't even need to really increase it that much because he gets a little extra turn meter boost out of it, but that's it. And that only happens once per turn. So it helps against the waves to make him a little bit faster, which is kind of nice. And against the boss, it's a little bit of extra turn meter. But honestly, just having that on him is going to make him that much faster, which can be very helpful when you're fighting the boss. So there you go. Fire Knight Hard, how I'm managing to tackle it on the free-to-play. Hopefully it's a bit of a guide that you guys can actually possibly copy something similar on this build. I tried to offer different champions you can swap in and out. I'm not going to be able to include every single champion that will probably work on this. Obviously, there's plenty of different options here in Raid. I tried to talk about what the roles were, so you at least understood what roles these champions were playing in the teams and why they are really good in the places they are. And again, there's plenty of other options out there. There's a lot of free-to-play accessible options for this stuff. I mentioned Karl is another option that will be very good. For me, Alice was a free champion, but for newer players, they may not have an Alice, so Alice is not going to be as good of an option. So you're going to be looking for other champions. Honestly, Michelangelo should not be too bad for a damage dealer. He does a pretty good wave clear. He brings decreased defense, which is not too bad. He does have a double hit A1. So that would be a very good free-to-play option currently right now. Plus, of course, you're going to get the 5-star soul, which is going to make him a lot easier to build. And you know what? He gives you some leech too. So he actually gives you some additional healing, which you don't necessarily have otherwise on that team. So that could be very good as well. So Michelangelo could be a very good option for a lot of you out there as well. So hey, let me know, what are you doing for Fire Knight Hard? Have you tackled Fire Knight Hard? What kind of teams are you running? How high are you going on Fire Knight Hard? Let me know down below. Any other places you want to see me try to show off where I'm using my Valkyrie, let me know as well. She has been helpful in Centranos. She's certainly good for faction wars, and you know, I might even test her out in Arena on this account because I think she has a lot of potential there as well. She's certainly not a top tier champion, but she is a good champion that can certainly help a lot of accounts like mine here. So I appreciate you guys leaving those comments, hitting those like buttons, hitting that subscribe button. You guys are an absolutely amazing community. You all have a wonderful day, and until the next video, I am Bront CatHerder.